Alright, so listen, I know we talked a lot about Guild Wars 1 recently, but we're going to continue because there have been more updates and things going on. And hell, I'm happy to continue because stuff happening for the original game is so incredibly exciting to me. Today's actually really weird. I'm going to be making a news production on the second game and the first, which is just such a bizarre thing. In all my years covering this franchise, I've never had so much news to talk about that I can split the two games in two, but here we are. So, not only has there been another update to Guild Wars 1, which I'll talk you through in a second, there have been a lot more dev posts over on Reddit. They seem to be treating that as the main grounds for communication at the moment, and a big initiative was just revealed about 10 minutes before I sat down to make this video over on the forums, which I think everyone should be very excited about. So let's start off with the update itself. That's probably the juiciest thing. The patch notes originally dropped, as I said, on the Guild Wars 1 subreddit from Bill Freist. So he says, here's the release notes, which will be posted to the wiki when a community member gets a chance. Starting off with graphics, and here it is. Windowed full screen now works on any monitor. It uses the monitor that the majority of the window is on. Yeah, he talked about that directly in response to me on one of the threads, and there it is. It's kind of amazing because that means that Guild Wars 1 has this feature now, while Guild Wars 2 does not. Hilarious, really, but I'm guessing the next Living World release we see for Guild Wars 2, they'll also get this functionality, and now you can windowed full screen on your secondary, tertiary monitor, or whatever. Also, they've updated this, that the -LOD full command line argument is back. Remember, that was disabled with the big graphics update, which allowed people to use other arguments instead. Well, it's back now, and they say this functions the exact same way as it did prior to the main 9th update. Now, you might be wondering why that's happened. Over on Reddit, a random user was also wondering this. Essentially, what they've explained is if you turn that command line on, what that means is the advanced checkbox that's newly added in-game that doubles the render distance and stuff. Now, that will only double the render distance. It won't do anything to the billboards because the billboards, even with the advanced checkbox off, will still be enabled at the higher resolution. Does that make sense? So you just get like really meticulous, specific control over this stuff if you want it. So the next update is along the lines of the full screen stuff, which honestly I'm not entirely sure I fully understand, but it reads, the client will now perfectly clamp to the monitor when toggling from windowed full screen to windowed mode. Now, I've been excited about these updates, but I haven't actually played enough Guild Wars 1 since the May 9th update to swap between windowed full screen and windowed to really know what was going on there, but there you go, it properly clamps. Moving over to chat, they say fix an issue where the new whisper ignore option caused it to ignore whispers from friends sent from alternate characters of the same account. Again, this is really bizarre for me to read because when I produced the previous video about the graphics update, someone responded to me on one of the Reddit threads about this, which informed Bill about this, which he said he'd fix, and now here it is in the patch notes. So there's that as well, which apparently was a bit of a snag I hadn't mentioned in the prior video, but now has been resolved. This one I find hilarious. Help and support updated the URLs in the F10 menu. You guys might not know what the F10 menu even is. It's this. You can see it in the background. It helps you essentially learn about Guild Wars through the wiki. So at any point, I can scroll through this and get instant links to the Guild Wars 1 wiki, teaching me about the skills that I'm using, teaching me about recently encountered skills, other stuff like that. I was amazed to see that my old alliance actually had an alliance page on the wiki, which kind of blew my mind, and it was linked to in that help panel. I'm guessing because the game is getting so old, many of those URLs were busted. Well, Bill found them and updated them, and now they point to all the nice places. If you guys are Guild Wars 2 players, as you watch this video, by the way, GW2 does have a system like this. You can type /wiki and then ping an item at any point in game, and when you press enter you'll go to the Guild Wars 2 wiki about stuff. It's a really useful tip, and Guild Wars 1 had something similar, so that's been updated. Moving on, some other small busy work style updates here. Installer and patching. Automatically request elevation to admin when trying to install or patch the game, as it doesn't have the right permissions to do so. Don't forget, Guild Wars 1 was released onto XP systems, so this was before the whole right-click run as admin stuff became a thing, and so now they automatically request elevation. Note, this requires the client to be updated to the new build before this change takes effect for future updates. And also a note that the installer on Gw1.com will be updated to the new client. So an update over there as well. Finally, bug fixes. Local preferences will now always be saved on exit, which fixes issues such as graphics options not persisting. So what this would mean is if you play on Ultra with the advanced checkbox selected, you might turn the game off, go back in, and it's all reset. That would be annoying. I think that sound options would reset irritatingly like that all the time, and it would return to muting whenever you Alt-Tab, so I'm really happy with that one. Here's a big bug fix, probably the biggest change for me. Fixed a desync issue when the game is Alt-Tabbed or minimized that causes creatures to teleport after the game is restored. So, of all these patch notes, this, like, dust clearing, this cobweb removal that essentially this patch is, this update here is the big one for me. You guys probably have noticed whenever I've gone and got Guild Wars 1 footage for the past 2 to 3 years, if you've looked at the footage I've gathered for you, my hero, allies, and the enemies were just porting around. It's like all their running animations break and they just blink everywhere. Well, that was a bug which was, as I'd been told many times, caused by alt-tabbing, but it just wasn't practical for me to not alt-tab while making videos. So that would end up in the footage, and that would break the gameplay experience for a lot of people. Well, it's now been fixed, so that is actually genuinely huge. I really like that one. Moving on, they say the game will now have a 60 FPS max frame rate when the game isn't active. This means when the client doesn't have focus or isn't being rendered. So if it's minimized or alt-tabbed. I kind of freaked out a bit about that when I first read it, because I was like, oh man, I like high frame rate Guild Wars, but obviously while you're playing, you still get to go up to 144 or whatever. And finally, there's just a clarification that the alt-tab part of the fix isn't actually 100% resolved in the update. A hotfix with the remainder of the fix is coming. So yeah, he had that note that the remainder of the fix was coming. That arrived very quickly afterwards. So what I'm really saying in this video, it's not one update, it's two, but they came back to back very quickly. So here's the second part, which we have patch notes on wiki from. So general, they performed server maintenance, never really known what that means, and then bug fixes here. They say fixed a bug when alt-tabbing the client in full screen mode wouldn't mute audio while using the mute game audio when the client is in the background option. Fixed a desync issue when alt-tabbing the client in full screen mode for long periods of time would cause rubber banding and teleportation of other creatures and players. Note, this was additional improvements on top of the previous fix put in place in the last update. And finally, fixed a client crash on exit. So there you have it, guys. Obviously nothing too crazy exciting, nothing compared to the graphics update. This is decobwebbing, spring cleaning, getting the dust off of things, and bringing the game up to par a little more. And even introducing a quality of life feature that even Guild Wars 2 doesn't have right now with the windowed full screen thing. But don't be too disheartened. Some of you right now will be thinking, oh, okay, this is probably all we can expect of Guild Wars 1 now. There won't be anything that exciting. And honestly, I was in that camp too. But with this patch was some other stuff on Reddit that I want to jump straight into now, and that was a third dev. That dev being Lindsay Murdoch. So, just to back up for a second, we have to understand, guys, as the internet is often wont to do, is as soon as a little bit of attention was thrown at Guild Wars 1, people really swarmed to this. There was really a lot of enthusiasm, and people started calling for all number of updates and changes. Calling for the test crew to come back, calling for balance changes, calling for New Living World, or Guild Wars Beyond as it was called, calling for new maps, calling for just everything under the sun, which obviously those of us in a more reasonable, informed position would know is just unlikely to ever happen. But in that very wide net the community was casting, there were a few nuggets of good things. So at some point, I think it was a while ago now, 2 months ago, SCW said this: some nice soul needs to make a to-do list for me. Just so you know, any config changes I might make will need to be run past designers. And with that prompt, a stickied thread called the low-hanging fruit has now been born. It's the Guild Wars 1 community's attempt to compile what they consider to be low-hanging fruit. This is what the community thinks is low-hanging fruit. What is not actually low-hanging fruit, but what the community thinks would be low-hanging fruit that the devs could work on. Small, easy changes that would have a profound, positive impact on Guild Wars 1. And so this thread is a hive mind of all this different stuff, ranging from some very rare good ideas and mostly crazy, wild, over ambitious ideas. Right, all of that said, now we can come to Lindsay. So, you would expect maybe Bill to respond, you would expect maybe Steven to respond, and none other than Lindsay Murdoch does. That might be a name those of you familiar with the franchise will immediately recognize, and you should. Lindsay is known as, I don't know whether the only or one of the lead Guild Wars 2 designers who has been responsible for numerous pet projects and exciting things. I think she was behind the collection update quite recently. And also, though, perhaps more importantly for this thread, the lead designer of Guild Wars 1 for a time. Perhaps during the Twilight years, I certainly remember following the game very closely when she was. So this is someone who is very deeply embedded within ArenaNet, understands a lot of Guild Wars 2 side stuff, but also has a lot of memories and passion and understanding for Guild Wars 1 too. She appears in the low-hanging fruit thread to talk to the players about some of their ideas. So here it is. She says, I can give you some quick responses to some of these things from a design standpoint. First of all, on the topic of unobtainable minis. People in the thread basically were asking, hey, can we get some of the unobtainable minis back? And she says, could you compile a list of these minis for me? It bothers me that this has happened and I'd like to think about our options. So immediately that kind of blows my mind that, wow, we might actually get an update that adds new rewards to Guild Wars 1, and this would be the minis. There's a whole discussion we could go into about this, so if you guys don't understand, really, all of Guild Wars 1's economies are geared around obtaining the rarest items in the game, which probably are those minis. There were various magazine giveaways and very special event giveaways for just a handful of minis in the past, where like not even 1,000 of these items existed, or not even 50 of these items existed, or less and less and less. Extremely rare minis, very high value. But some of my most exciting moments of Guild Wars 1 ever were in the pursuit and hunt for these, and trading ectos and building my way up to getting as many as possible. I remember, for example, when I got my first mini Naga, and there was only like 911 of them in the game, and I felt like such a hotshot. Really, people who are amassing wealth in Guild Wars 1 these days, it's all oriented around those now unobtainable in any other way except through player trading items. So the idea of the devs adding more kind of eliminates all of that side of the game, because those big, lofty, unobtainable goals go away as now they have no value. But it means everybody gets to enjoy them. I'm not active enough in Guild Wars 1 to know whether it's actually a good idea or not. I would be fearful of doing it myself, but I guess it depends how people feel. Lindsay at least expresses that maybe more people should have access to them. And then immediately came back with a big edit, saying, I was a rewards designer for many years in this game. I understand the importance of exclusivity. Don't take this to mean that I intend to make whatever list you guys give me easily obtainable. I just want to look into the issue of these minis. So, yeah, we'll see what they do, but they might actually do something about that. There was a big controversial update related to this before as well, where they added a ton of similar minis to birthday gifts, I think. And maybe they'll continue something like that, I don't know. Another topic she responds to is to do with the stack size of items. People, I guess, were asking for that to be changed. And she says, I'd prefer we didn't change the stack size of items from a design standpoint. Rewards and progression are designed around the assumption of stack size. I can't entirely predict the way the game feel might change, creating too large of a design ripple for me to think we should prioritize time spent on this. So that was her next topic. It's crazy, guys, right? Like, I know that she's basically saying no to this, but the idea that they're thinking about prioritizing time and spending time on the game to do changes like this is so cool. And the next topic is 11 heroes. I guess what people in the thread were doing was asking, hey, can we get 11 heroes in the elite missions in factions, Ergo's Warren and the Deep? Because those are 12-man party missions, and currently in the game, a single player can only add a maximum of 7 heroes. So the full story here is that when Nightfall first came out, they only let you add 3, but in the game's Twilight years, that with the Mercenary update, they expanded that all the way up to 7, so any individual should be able to go anywhere interior and field full heroes. But I think back when that update happened with the Mercenaries, the devs forgot or decided it wasn't worth the time to update it fully for those very special 12-man party instances, and so you can't do it there. And that's probably what the players are asking for, specifically those two. Lindsay doesn't seem to realize that in this post, though, unfortunately, and her response is, 11 heroes? You mean like everywhere in PvE? Yeah, that's going to be pretty much the same response. That would be a massive balance ripple to the game. Without some kind of additional difficulty level over hard mode, it's a huge imbalance. Hard mode took about 3 months of full-time designer and programmer's time. So, unfortunate that she missed the point there, but I think someone sets her right, and we will see another comment on this in a second. Interesting bit of trivia there, though, that hard mode only took 3 months of time, and it also feels like the idea of an ultra-hard mode may have whizzed through her brain there for a second. Can you imagine if that was an update in 2018? Christ. And so, last of all, she talks about the idea of more just straight-up content. Story content. Okay, so here's the thing. Most of the original live team still work at ArenaNet. How cool is that, guys? They say most of us are working on Living World for Guild Wars 2. We love this franchise, and Guild Wars 1 holds a very special place in all of our hearts. We would love to. But building content is incredibly time-consuming. I just don't know how we could do it in our off hours. Oh, come on! Look, they're so sincerely talking about wanting to do more story content as well. I really hope they find a way to officially support a live development team for GW1. There's more to come, guys, as well. So that was the first post from Lindsay. After she posted this, there were several responses about other things. Hero battles, and clarification on the Deep and Ergos thing, which I've explained in this video. So here's our next message. She says, so I chatted about heroes in the elite missions with the relevant people, and there are unfortunately some issues with allowing full party heroes. The way that the Deep splits you in the beginning being one of them. This doesn't look likely to happen because of the time investment for both code and design is too great. So this again is a bit of an unfortunate message. What she's talking about is at the start of the Deep, you're forced into 3 mini parties that then reconnect later. But I guess she doesn't realize the teleporting bugs that people do where you flag the heroes away, far enough away, and they like port back to you even though you flag them into different teleports and stuff. So people have got around that. I'm sure she knows that by now because lots of people pointed that on Reddit as well. But she does say that's just one of the design issues with adding 11 heroes for those missions. So it probably won't happen, I think, guys. Also, let's be real. For the discussion we've got out of it, fine, it's interesting, but this actually isn't a very interesting update for Guild Wars 1, is it? Oh, it means a few more people will be soloing those 2 facets of endgame a bit easier than instead doing 7 players or finding a friend to load in some extra heroes. It's not the kind of tweak that Guild Wars 1 that could radically reinvigorate or change the amount of content and places people play. So, I mean, I don't care too much about this, even if she says no, for flawed or not flawed reasons. Okay, so that's one. Then we move on to hero battles, which was basically the Guild Wars 1 version of Heart of Thorns' Stronghold. A PvP format that barely anyone played, never got many updates from the devs, and kind of just languished in the background. Until eventually in Guild Wars 1, it, along with another arena, were cut away to consolidate the dwindling PvP player base. So Lindsay was the Guild Wars 1 lead at the time, and people raised it. A decade later, people raised it because some people are still salty that it was cut. And she says this: it was ultimately my call to remove hero battles. I have thought about the decision many times over the years, and I've never found a reason that it was a bad call. I think it was the right decision at the time, and in hindsight, it was still the right decision. The reasons we had for removing it at the time are still valid today, if not more so. The fact of the matter is that hero battles was extremely bug-ridden, poorly balanced, and not popular among the player base. There were literally more players complaining about our decision to remove it than there were matches in a week. Matches, not players, matches. That is how little the game type was being played. And the vast majority of those matches were red resign. So, a little note for you guys, that's where people would just go in and if you were on red team, you'd quit instantly, giving blue team rewards. And you'd keep doing that for Z keys and stuff. And especially when they announced the removal of the arena, people farmed in there, myself included. She says that is how little is being played. If we resurrected the game type now, I firmly believe that would be in even worse shape than it was before. Even if there was interest internally in bringing it back, which there isn't, I would fight that decision. And if the investment in fixing it wasn't worth it 9 years ago when we had a team dedicated to Guild Wars 1, it's definitely not worth the investment now. As for Team Arenas, I can't remember the reasoning behind it as crystal clear as I can hero battles, so I'm not going to stumble around on my thoughts there. So that's a pretty hefty response. That galvanized a lot of discussion. I even got down in the dirt and talked a little bit about it. I agree very much with Lindsay. I actually really like seeing her just stand very stoically by her decisions. Quite often you find people will stumble a bit and hedge their bets, try to please everyone and say, oh, maybe it's worth discussing. But no, she's very strict about it, and I like that. That clarity, that clear focus. Yeah, forget about hero battles. To be honest, I kind of think it probably wouldn't be that harmful to bring it back. Yeah, no one would play it, but at least it would be an option to go explore every now and then. Like, I don't see it doing much harm necessarily. People still play Guild Wars 1 random arenas, and I don't think by plopping hero battles in at this day and age is going to detract the people who in RA, for example. But it's probably not worth anything to bring hero battles back, and that's the point. You want to look at an update that they can do in their free time that will be worth something. I won't detract this entire video with a big hero battles discussion. We could easily go into it. But she ends up by saying here, glad you're digging the Guild Wars 2 living world. We are busting our butts here to provide a massive amount of content at a high quality bar on a regular basis. I'm very proud of the way we're telling stories now, and we have some amazing stuff coming up. So you got to remember, guys, their main focus, their full focus is Guild Wars 2 stuff, where there is an enormous amount of things going on. The game is in its heyday for quality and quantity of updates coming out for PvE. And here in their free time, they're even looking back at this. So that's what Lindsay says. I believe there was one more post as well. It's this one here where she's asked, wouldn't arena-based content be pretty easy to make? Take one of the existing arenas and then use the tournament mechanics you already have set up to make some challenges. And she says the short answer is no, absolutely not easy. I mean, I suppose it depends on your definition of easy, but as long as you factor time, which we must since the company isn't funding any Guild Wars 1 work, it's all passion work done in off hours, it changes the equation a bit. Just to give an example, the bunny in Drakar Lake that drags you down into the spirit ambush, that took me 3 full days of scripting to get working. That's just design scripting time and doesn't include the necessary code hookups or quality assurance testing time required. That's just for a single encounter in one map, and it took more time to build than Bill spent on this entire graphics update. I mean, Saknoth Valley is essentially a copy-paste of Arbor Bay, but it still took me over a week to get it all playing right. Content is very time-consuming to build, and that's for non-competitive content. Competitive content is so much harder to balance. So, I mean, I wish we could talk more about this. It would be really fascinating to see what she means that is so much more difficult about competitive stuff. But yeah, it really does strike me that the Guild Wars 1 engine and way it works and handles really wasn't very streamlined and really was very difficult to deal with. If you guys don't know what this bunny is, it's you just walk to a cave and there's an NPC bunny that looks all happy and you follow it and it walks away from you and then you follow it and it walks away until eventually all these monsters spawn. And it was a really cool moment of Eye of the North, but if that takes 3 days to make, it kind of makes me say wow to what we saw with the War in Kryta and whatnot. I do think that they probably had some great workflows and stuff in place years ago, but without it being officially funded, I don't know. So we kind of got two sides of the coin here. We have Lindsay coming in at first and, you know, this suggestion that there's a lot of passion and enthusiasm and they'd love to find a way, but then also there's quite grim stuff about how hard the game is to develop. So I guess I'll let you guys decide on just how likely it is we'll see other Guild Wars 1 updates coming. Do you think it will just be more dust clearing and cobweb clearing? Or maybe something a bit more substantial? Rewards-based things? What would be your low-hanging fruit? I'd like to think that we here over on this channel have got a good perspective for what genuinely is low-hanging fruit. I'd love to hear what you guys think. What would be a small change that would have a very high impact and get people excited to go back to Guild Wars 1, replay a lot of that content with a fresh twist and a different experience? What do you think the real low-hanging fruit is? I'd be very curious. That's not all though. Just before we close off the video, I did mention at the start that something was revealed about 10 minutes before I sat down to speak to you all. And well, it was this on the Guild Wars 2 forums, but nonetheless about Guild Wars 1. As you guys should know, every now and then over on the GW2 forums, the devs have been allowing the community to ask them questions, ask me anything style about a variety of subjects. The most recent one was on Guild Wars 2 lore, but check it out. To coincide with this this reinvigorated stuff on the Guild Wars 1 side of things, here we have Gail Gray just posted and said, "Hello, we invite you to join several of our devs for the May 2018 ArenaNet forum chat in order to try and address more questions and comments from forum members while allowing dev team members time to research their answers and respond as their schedules allow. We will be accepting questions for 3 days. Then the devs will answer as they can anytime within a 3-week period. We believe this will be a more satisfying and sustainable process for both members and devs." Here are the details. Topic: the original Guild Wars, a retrospective. So sub-forum for this opens up on Wednesday morning. You can finish posting your questions Friday afternoon, and then the devs will be answering, you know, all the way out until the future there. So join us to ask questions, ponder mysteries, share your stories and impressions, and generally engage with team members directly involved in our amazing, incredible, beloved, and still vibrant original game, Guild Wars. Have you ever wondered about a specific event, pondered the origins of a storyline, or wondered how it ties to Guild Wars 2? Felt curiosity about the origins of a certain creature's look or animation? We'll be talking with folks who were involved in Guild Wars design, programming, art, storytelling, and other elements of development. They'll post a guest list when it actually launches. So yeah, a freaking Guild Wars 1 AMA. Let me just be clear. Ever since Guild Wars 2 was really announced and all the focus became about the second game, and then updates to the second game, and then expansions for the second game, and it's all been, we've not really had an opportunity, no major interviews, no nothing really, to sit down and actually talk with the devs about Guild Wars 1. So this is really unprecedented. We haven't seen this for so many years. There's about a million things I have on my mind. So get thinking, guys. You can ask them about Utopia more. You can ask them about Guild Wars Beyond stuff, like what we were going to see in the Nightfall aspect. You can ask them about mysteries like the Nameless Lich in Drachna's Forge. You can ask about the Wizard's Tower in Ascalon. You can ask about the development of pre-searing. You can ask about balance and what they would have liked to have done with overhauls for example, the Paragon and stuff, which never ended up coming. You can ask really obscure, crazy stuff, like the suggestion that Rurik had brothers or sisters from the manuscripts. You can ask about the sealed deck trading card game stuff that they used to play at conventions. You can ask about the high-resolution skill art and whether we can get a full set anywhere. You can ask about their philosophies behind Guild Wars Toolbox, or user interface customization through stuff like TextMod, UMod, and the lack thereof in the sequel. You can ask about those really early world map designs we saw Matthew Medina post about a long time ago. You can ask about really early systems that most people have forgotten about, like, say, die mixing and those especially rare old modded weapons that used to drop and now are worth a fortune because they don't really exist anywhere anymore. You can ask why there was no CGI cutscene made for Nightfall. Christ, I could go on for hours with different ideas of questions. And you guys have got a few days to now think about that and go open field. So I really want to see a big response for this. What I'm mostly scared about is that the majority of old Guild Wars 1 enthusiasts aren't around to hear this news. So spread it and make sure that this is a good AFC. I'm more excited about this AFC than I was even about the lore AFC from before. So, yeah, get on it, guys. That's about it. I will finish the video with one final little thing from the community. Do you remember how we joked in the previous graphics update that we could bribe the devs with cupcakes to be able to get more things? Well, some people took it seriously. There is actually a GoFundMe online right now for getting ArenaNet cupcakes purely because of their updates and work on Guild Wars 1. I think the idea is they're trying to get cupcakes for the entire company. So just because of what Bill and Steven did, just so that the entire company's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of cool people who love Guild Wars 1 still. Maybe we should dev for them or something. I think that's the idea, and people have put their money where their mouth is. They're over halfway to the goal already at over 845 euros. It's up to you guys if you want to contribute, but I thought I'd give it a shout out because it seems pretty cool. And if it gets more stuff in a roundabout way to Guild Wars 1, hell yeah, I'm up for it. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to contribute. And yeah, there you have it, guys. That's the Guild Wars 1 news roundup. And if they keep doing more substantial stuff, then I'll be back. I'll definitely be back with the forum AFC results, and feel free to ask any of my proposed questions here or any of your own coming up. So cheers, guys. I'll see you next time.